I think we're about to start. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this workshop titled ICDE Global Outlook to OER, What's on the Agenda and How to Engage. I would first like to thank our good friends and colleagues of Eden for the invitation to host a partner event in relation to this year's European Online and Distance Learning Week. It is a pleasure and honor to contribute to the program. My name is Tore Nelsvik. I'm the Secretary General of ICDE. And in today's workshop, we will start with a short introduction about ICDE, our core strategic focus areas, where OER is one of them, and highlight some of the activities we are undertaking through our members and partners. Then we will have 3 presentations of 10 minutes each, where you will be introduced to 3 of our current and coming OER-related activities and projects. You will be introduced to the results of a survey developed by the ICDE OER Advocacy Committee, a working group and project focusing on OER capacity building in Francophone Africa, and finally, a new European Erasmus Plus project led by ICDE that will start in January 2021. I will introduce the speakers as we go along with the program, and there will be opportunities to ask questions, either by raising your hand or submitting your questions in the chat. And the presentations will be followed by a panel discussion with the presenters, where the discussion will be focusing on cross-sectorial and cross-country collaboration on OER from different regional perspectives. And again, you will have the opportunity of asking questions to the panelists. We will close this session at 15 minutes past 6. It will be recorded and slides will be made available afterwards. And now let me share my screen and start with an introduction of ICDE. So we are the leading global membership organization for distance and online education. We are a very old organization, founded already back in 1938 in Canada, and we're a global, not-for-profit, non-governmental organization. We are hosted and partly funded by Norway since 1988, which is why the Secretariat is based in Oslo, Norway. And we're in a formal consultative relationship with partnership with UNESCO. Our global outreach, you can see it on the map. We have more than 250 members and partners in over 70 countries across the globe. And together they're impacting more than 15 million students across all the continents. And the purpose has really been the same all along since 1938. It is to foster inclusive education through flexible teaching methods and new technologies for learning. They have, of course, changed a lot since 1938. When the organization was founded, it was named International Council for Correspondence Education. But this is the purpose. This is what we work for every day. And how we're able to do that, because the Secretariat is very small, it is the work that we do with our members and partners across the globe. We have institutional members, mainly from the higher education sector, and we have individual memberships, student memberships. So many experts, faculty are taking part in our global community. And we also work with associations on regional and global levels. And this is why we can work on all the levels, from the policy level to the leadership level with the institutions, and on the more practical level with the knowledge and good practice sharing of open, flexible, and distance education. And so on our strategic priorities, we're going to launch our next strategic plan in November. So this is a sneak peek into that. But no surprise, we will advocate globally for open, flexible, and distance learning and enable regional and national influence through our members and partners. We will extend the global reach to more underrepresented regions of ICDE, new stakeholders, and disadvantaged learner populations. And we will continue to work on the 3 prioritized areas: quality, of education, open education resources, and innovation in education, new technologies. We have been engaged with OER for many years already. ICDE has two different networks related to OER. We have our chairs, one of them represented in the panel today, the ICDE chairs in OER, and we have the OER Advocacy Committee led by Ebba Ossian-Nilsson, which is also on the panel and will present today. We are, through the consultative partnership with UNESCO, also a part of the OER Dynamic Coalition. And we have several activities, which you see snapshots of on the screen. In the pipeline, and what you will also be introduced for in today's workshop, is the new Erasmus Plus project on OER called Encore Plus, and that will be presented later on. And also this Francophone Africa project on capacity building in support of the implementation of the UNESCO OER recommendation. So that was a brief introduction. I will now turn over to the first presentation by Professor Dr. Ebba Ossian-Nilsson from Sweden. Ebba is a senior independent researcher, expert, advisor, consultant, quality reviewer, and influencer in the field of open, online, flexible, and distance learning. Ebba is on the executive committee of ICDE and of EDEN, and she's also chair of the ICDE OER Advocacy Committee. And at a national level, Ebba Ossian-Nilsson is the Vice President of the Swedish Association for Distance Education and also a board member of the Swedish Organization for E-Competence. So please, Ebba, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Torun, for this introduction. It's great to be here together with ICDE. But as I'm also with EDEN, I would like to promote the hashtag we have for this European Open and Distance Learning Week. I have written it in the chat. So please share on social media if you like. And you're also welcome to introduce yourself in the chat. I will share my screen. So yes, I will briefly tell you about the work we have done by the ICDE OER Advocacy Committee recently, and which is about to be finalized and also be presented not just here, but also at the President Forum at ICDE pretty soon. So it is in the final stage. We did a survey on the recommendation of OER, which was launched in November 2019, and also some questions about the COVID pandemic situation. First, shortly about ICDE OER Advocacy Committee. We are 9 committee members spread out all over the world, so all regions are more or less represented. It is me, I'm from Sweden, and I'm from Europe. We have Jenrin Wessler from US. We have Håkan Aydin from Turkey, James Glastag from US, Daniswar Harishadan from India, Xianyang Shang from China, Rajev Shangiani from Canada, Mipine Mako from South Africa, and Cristina Guzmão from Brazil. We have a mandate for 2020, but actually the ICDE OER Advocacy Committee had a previous period since 2017 to 2019 as well. And some of the ambassadors are the same, and there are some new ones. So what we did in this survey, we decided that it should be good to have an outlook, an outreach of what is going on around the globe with the OER recommendation. So we built a survey on the 5 areas which are in the OER recommendation by UNESCO. Build the capacity of stakeholders to find, reuse, create, and share OER. Develop supportive policies. Ensure inclusive and equitable access to quality OER. nurture the creation of sustainability models for OER, facilitate international cooperation, and there were also some questions about the monitoring and evaluation processes. And in addition, there were some questions related to the effects of COVID-19. We had both quantitative and qualitative data, and we had 123 persons responded. And those were from all over the world. Also, all regions were represented. It has to be mentioned that the respondents were individuals, so they were not always represented the country, and that is very much clear in our analysis. But it gave a glimpse of what is happening in the country. The results are briefly, it is still very early for most governments to make policy changes and changes because of the given complexity of the OER and open education. And then we had this urgency of the COVID-19, which overtook government's work. But on the other hand, some issues had to be rapidly done due to the COVID-19, and that was also reported by the respondents. It was also seen by the results that COVID-19, as we all know, had acted as a catalyst for greater awareness raising of open education and OER and why it is important. And it has also radically changed the way education institutions are doing things, but also about research and teaching and the social responsiveness and internationalization. And new technologies have been very much more used due to the pandemic. We also are given some recommendations, and that is, of course, to really take the OER recommendations seriously, all the 5 areas. And also to give countries recognition for their direct and indirect work on that, and to strengthen the framework of the recommendation to be understood and implemented by everyone, and also to develop a stronger network around information sharing, but not just about information, but really about actions within the 5 areas. And then we also have a number of recommendations to ICDE, what ICDE can support the members and the member countries for the implementation of the recommendation. So thank you very much for the possibility to briefly share some of the results of this survey.
Thank you very much, Ebba, for that presentation. I think we will just move to the next one. You will have the opportunity to ask questions to all the presenters after we have done all 3 of them. So I suggest we move to our next speakers. So that would be Jacques Dang and Anaïs Malbrand. Jacques Dang from France is Technology Director at Haute École de Commerce in Paris. He's a member, he's a secretary for ONEJ, the French OER repository for management and economics, and a member of the steering committee for telecommunications at Systematic Paris region, and an expert for the French Ministry for Higher Education Research and Innovation. And Anaïs Malbrand is my colleague in the Secretariat here in Oslo. She's a senior advisor and the key contact at the ICDE Secretariat for the ICDE Francophone OER Working Group, the Uncorpus Project, and the OER Advocacy Committee. So please, Jacques and Anaïs, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Turin. I welcome everyone. Good evening. We're very happy to that you could join us in the workshop and in this presentation of the OER Francophone working group. I'm happy to introduce you to the group together with Jacques that Turin presented. We'll first go specifically into the working group presentation, who they are, how they started, then go through, show you the specific project that will be soon launched within the group, and explain how you can engage with the group and with the project. So Jacques, please.
Thank you, Anaïs, and thank you very much, Torun, for the presentation. So I'll just add one thing that I here mostly represent L'Université Numérique, which is the Federation of Thematic OER repositories for French higher education. So we've been, of course, we've been in contact with ICDE for a long time, but seen from the French-speaking OER and higher education community, ICDE has been for a long time a major player for open distance education worldwide, but we found that its focus was mostly for the English-speaking world. So we initiated a few small steps towards each other a few years ago with participation in panel discussions at Online Educa Berlin or joint study for a European project which has now morphed into Encore Plus, which Daniel will describe to you later on. And 2 years ago, we joined forces, the French Ministry of Higher Education and other French players and Open Education Consortium to support ICDE in the organization of the 2018 Open Education Leadership Summit in Paris. So at the time, we had about 150 participants who were focused on developing roadmaps for various aspects of the future of open education. So this successful collaboration led us to think that we could work more together in order to reinforce the promotion of OER in French-speaking countries. And we formalized this relationship last March, just a week before the lockdown, during the what should have been the UNESCO Mobile Learning Week, and which was the online launch of the UNESCO OER Dynamic Coalition. So we believe that we would work well in French-speaking regions and also sub-regions. So that's why we focus mostly on French-speaking sub-Saharan countries with whom we had developed a number of partnerships, which were very much on display last year when we were all together at the e-Learning Africa conference in Abidjan. And we established this cooperation in March. The first axis of this collaboration is the launch of a working group of experts coming from both the academic and the policy-making worlds, with a common goal, working together to promote the use of OERs along the lines of the UNESCO recommendation for the benefit of learners. So the current makeup of the group reflects our goal to have experts from these two worlds, but we will also add in the future experts coming from the business world, of course. So we have representatives from France, from Senegal, Mali, the Republic of Congo, of course UNESCO and French National Commission for UNESCO, but we are also already envisioning the extension to other Francophone countries in Central and West Africa. And of course, as in the current makeup, with both the virtual universities and the ministries of higher education and research. So perhaps we'll move on to the next slide, Anaïs.
Thank you, Jacques. I will introduce you to an initiative that has taken birth in the group. It is a project that is made to support the OER recommendation, the UNESCO OER recommendations implementation in a selection of Francophone African countries. So we're currently focusing on Senegal, Mali, the Republic of Congo, but also potentially will include Benin, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Central African Republic. The idea is to focus on the two areas of the OER recommendation, the capacity building and supportive policy areas, which is area 1 and 2. And we have created it in with focus of having a multi-sectoral dialogue. The idea is to join academical and ministerial level in workshops to discuss the needs for the implementation of the recommendation in their countries. But we also, because of the multisectoral nature of the group, the working group itself will also have the potential to include the private sector and other sectors in the initiative. The focusing on the capacity building area of the UNESCO OER recommendation is also very important. We will have a capacity building needs analysis at the first part of the project. We will also already we have also already capacity building tools that we are working on that Jacques will present later. But we'll also identify if there is a need for more. And the idea is to create a roadmap for the participants so that they can receive also support to implement the recommendation in the countries. And we have also thought it through a canalizing nature so that we can build on an initiative that already present in the countries. For instance, we're working together UNESCO office in Senegal, and we'll build on what they're doing already with the similar actors. And also ICDE work with this course, for instance, that Jacques will present. That's already something that we've been working on with OERU in New Zealand and with the working group. The cultural and approach is also very important. We are focusing on the French-speaking world, but we're documenting everything, and we would like to I'll come back to that later, but really to create this project so that it can be replicable in other languages in other countries. But now we'll focus on one of the capacity building material that we're working on now that Jacques will present to you.
So thank you, Anaïs. We're currently working on this, the adaptation to the Francophone environment of a course developed by the UNESCO ICDE chair for OER in New Zealand. So it's developed by OER Universitas in English, and it provides an access to a course and tests about competency in copyright and Creative Commons licensing. So we face a number of successive tasks in doing so. The first one was done by linguists to translate the course from English to French, of course. The second one we're currently focusing on is the adaptation from a technical and legal point of view, because the course was developed in a common law environment, and we are mostly in French-speaking African countries in a Roman law environment. So there are, of course, there are international treaties and agreements, but we have to make some adaptations. And we also have to take into account the cultural relevance of the illustrations, the case studies. For instance, one of the case studies very much focused on Hamlet and Shakespeare, which are great examples, but perhaps we have to adapt that also to the Francophone environment. So this is the part of the task, the second part of the task that we are doing on the course. And UNESCO very much relies on this tool, this course, and this competency granting course as a capacity building tool for both universities and civil servants in ministries in French-speaking African countries. So this is something that we will be also beta testing with a number of countries in order to go beyond the technical, the legal, and the cultural adaptation to see that it really fits the needs of the various players in these countries. So this is a process that we are working on, and we are also envisioning the fact that we could work with other language regions, because we are working very much with Angola and Mozambique in Africa, and we also have partners in the universities in Brazil. I see that one of them has joined us for this conference, for this workshop. Welcome. And so we would like to replicate the process for the Lusophone countries with having both the representatives from the EdTech sector in Brazil and Portugal, and also from the academic side and also from the ministerial side. So hopefully we are at the start of a very challenging process, both for the Francophone world and also for other non-English speaking communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacques. I will just now give you a few ideas on how you can engage to the participants. We, for instance, will publish several calls for action within the project. We have now this week launched a call for experts. We're looking for an expert in the Francophone, French-speaking experts, OER experts to participate in the project that has experience in Francophone African countries. So that, for instance, you can share and also apply. The material that will be created within the project can also, of course, the whole concept of OER being used, reused, adapt the languages. We will document everything. So that can also be something that we'll be very interested in following if you're interested. And yeah, replicating in other regions of Europe, of the globe. Once we have documented and we finish with this project that will take part within December 2020 until October 2021. We'll also share everything and also are very open for inputs and welcome replications. So thank you, everyone. I invite you to join our community. Tolerant will do too. Write to us at ICDE if you're interested. I'm the contact for this specific project and for our corpus after too, also for the RAC. So write to me if you're interested in engaging. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anaïs and Jacques. And it is indeed a major breakthrough that we finally are doing some OER activities in another language than English. And we could never have done so without the support and knowledge from our French members as Université Numérique, Jacques and his connections, and with the virtual universities in Francophone Africa. So thank you very much for that. We will now move to the next presentation. That will be by Professor Daniel Burgos and Davor Orlik. And I will briefly introduce them to you. Professor Daniel Burgos is a full professor of technologies for education and communication and vice rector for UNIR, International Research at Universidad Internacional de La Rioja, UNIR. And in addition, he holds a UNESCO chair on e-learning and is the ICDE chair in open educational resources. And he also works as director of the Research Institute for Innovation and Technology in Education, UNIR ETED. And Davor Orlik is the Chief Operating Officer at the International Artificial Intelligence Research Center and Knowledge for All Foundation with 60 global members in machine learning. He is an active in artificial intelligence research, open education, policies, and business innovation in education. And Daniel and Davor is going to present the new Erasmus Plus project that will take off in January 21, where ICDE has the lead. So please, the floor is yours, Daniel and Davor.
How do we do this, Daniel? You're going to start?
Please go ahead and start, Daniel. I don't believe we can hear you, Daniel.
Yeah, it's the usual. I'm clumsy with this. Sorry, so much technology, but at the end, all these mobile thingies and the micros, it's a challenge to me. So if you agree, as we agreed in before the presentation, I can go with a couple of slides about the project just to contextualize and core. Thank you so much for the presentation, Turun. I think we are doing a wonderful job with this project and you in general in ICDE. The project to us is a challenge, okay? I think it means a challenge because it's a meta project in my view, okay? The project brings together open educational resources in repositories in a cluster as a full network of them, okay? In fact, the full name of ENCOG Plus is a European network for catalyzing open resources in education which is, I think, is a very good description of what we expect to do there. It's a Knowledge Alliance project, which in fact it means that it's a bunch of people working together in a network, which is the Knowledge Alliance. Okay, it lasts 3 years, which it will give us time enough just to build this relation and to encourage these relations and to foster the motto and the basic objectives of the project beyond the borders of the project, which is one of the challenges always. Okay, this part of replication, exploitability, replicability, sustainability, which in this case should start since the first month of the project. There are a number of partners that you can see there, head by the ICDE, of course, consortium, which is really nice. And also a number of universities and other institutions across Europe in half a dozen countries. And the core of the project, the aim, the basic goal of the project is to create a dynamic, sustainable network. And I think this is the key words here, okay? Sustainable network, because we've lived together, I think, in the past for the last 15 years or even more, all these networks of excellence, which are really nice. But they last a number of years, and the sustainability sometimes is challenged by a number of issues, mainly the commitment from people, mainly the budget. And in this case, we really want to achieve a sustainable network. So we start, this is a seed project, and later it will continue during and after the project, long after, okay? This is what we expect. And it will focus on OER repositories in Europe, or European OER repositories, which are many, and we will connect both things, the repositories and the people, both also in academic environments and in enterprise, in companies and large SMEs enterprise. So we can have a real impact into the society. It's not just from academia to academia and we stay in the same layer, but we have a direct connection to the society, working with companies and academy all together, just to make the impact a little larger, and if we can, of course, useful for the regular citizen, as well as the faculty members or any other researcher in Europe. This is the final goal for that. I think that the vision in our case is that, I don't know, the word catalyst maybe is a little, I don't know, optimistic, but in fact, we should have really a final goal there, okay? Be the catalyst for innovation in terms of open educational resources, and the network is really a big challenge, a big dream. Let's see how far we get from there, okay? We have a number of objectives. We don't need to read them all. I will just highlight a couple of them. As I said before, is setting up the network. The second one is foster the collaboration between the repositories and all these open educational resources, open educational practice, open education as such ecosystem, and also to integrate institutional strategies between business and academia altogether. Sometimes the line there, the division line is very blurred, okay? Because sometimes universities also require some business plan, and business sometimes require also the support from academia, okay? So I think that's really a very good objective there. Let's see if we can make it. Also, we will establish an open, distributed, highly trusted, community-based OER, meaning people. If we don't have people, we will fail, okay? Doesn't matter if the repository is really cool. We need people actually to use, reuse, share, create, and collaborate and disseminate, okay? And the final one is to demonstrate the innovation potential within business and through business model. We call it also sustainability models. Again, with the coming back, the statement that I said before, the objective of to last longer than the actual project lifetime, okay? Which is always the expectation. There are a number of outcomes that we will create and hopefully will last later. The network, the architecture, the guidelines, the community, and the startup community. So it's very ambitious, and we are really looking forward to go into the projects right now. And the target groups, I think that I said that before, but anyway, education for sure, all the academia there, business, meaning providers, service providers, product providers, content providers, and of course, any type of business plan related to the core of the project. And if we can, that I hope that we can, all the type of institutions from making policy descriptions, policy based competence frameworks, even policies themselves, okay, coming from public institutions or accredited agencies related to them. So we will address academia, business, and public institutions related to policy making, okay? This is a detail about the work packages. I think this is not interesting right now. And the last slide is about the methodological approach distributed by every work package. Soon we will have a website. You can go there. Later it will be announced properly, coming from ICDE as effective as usual. And you will have the chance to go to every single work package and the workload distribution and how we will run it from here. That's it. Thank you so much for the interest in the project, and we will hope to come back soon in a few months with some early winnings, some early outcomes of the projects. Over to you, Davor.
Just maybe a small addition to your description. The strength of this project is actually its design. For being an Erasmus Plus, it has 2 nonprofits in it and 1 for-profit company. So that's a very interesting combination, and it kicks off with a lot of technology that it's already being done. So if people, or should I say, institutions with open educational resources or freely or openly licensed materials are out there in this call, then they can join us already now, and we can show them the benefits of the project's already existing technologies. But it does bring to the forefront a very interesting question, which is what happens when the world of openness, I wouldn't say collide, but I'd say, you know, meets the world of business and the world of you know, additional value. So what we're trying to do is literally demystify the idea of business within open education, because it goes hand in hand. So I think that's why the project is exciting, because of the constellation of the players, the technology it brings in, but also this business side of things, which probably with the argument of COVID-19 will make the use of OER in many ways much more beneficial. And my background now is with the IRCAI, which is the new AI lab under the auspices of UNESCO. And essentially we see OER as data, right? So we don't see materials as in, you know, coming from here or there, but we see them in, you know, through the lenses of data, as in if OER is in different languages, like Jacques was saying before, then we see that as, you know, as cross-linguality and something that really excites us. So how do we translate those materials? How do we, or should I say that data, how do we recommend materials from different cultures and different repositories to users, you know, across barriers? So that's something that we really bring into the project, and I'm very excited, even though it's an Erasmus one, and which usually tends to be very policy oriented. I think it's a very nice combo, and it might bring very interesting results in this landscape.
Thanks, Davor. Are you going to present any slides as well?
No, I'm not going to present any slides. I think we're just about there with time. But essentially this is it with the technology. I'd rather drop in one more link that people can check out during the Q&A session, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much. And we as the coordinators of this project look very much forward to working with the different partners, as you say, that we have represented academia and the business sector in the project, and to really investigate the value proposition for the different stakeholders of OER. That is very exciting. Okay, are there any immediate questions now to any of the presenters? We have heard from Ebba Ossian-Nilsson on the OER Advocacy Committee with the survey. We have heard from Jacques and Anaïs on the Francophone Africa project. And we have heard from Davor and Daniel on the Encore Plus, the new Erasmus Plus project. I cannot see any immediate questions in the chat. So, but if there are any, please, now is the time.
Well, my question would be, can we turn on the cameras?
Agree.
I'm
It's
kidding,
nicer.
I'm joking. I'm joking. No panic, no panic. I'm just joking. Oh, nice. Christina. Okay, I see people. Mariana. Europe is in the dark. I see Paul. Di. Fabio, hi.
Yeah, hi. It is indeed nicer.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Mira, Sandra, Corina, Mariara, Nicolina, Cornelio. Fari. Okay. Zehra. Hi. Come on, we're getting there. Just a few more. Just a few more votes. Just a few more votes.
The moment when you can also engage in the panel discussion, so it's a good moment to show the faces. It's true.
Maybe I can ask a question to the presenters if anyone cares to ask. I just come to think of, I was speaking at another conference earlier today, a Norwegian one, also about OER. And one question that was addressed from one of the participants, it was a lot of faculty members from universities in Norway present at that conference. It was, yeah, well, it's okay with open license resources. We understand that there's a point in attributing licenses for sharing, but what we're really interested in is pedagogical design and how to use them. So how do we share these practices? Is it really too much focus on the resources and the licensing in itself? Does anyone care to respond to that?
Maybe I can start at least.
Please, Anna.
I also heard this question very, very often, and it is so much focus on the resources as such, and also mainly about producing resources. I think, in my opinion and my experiences, the OER recommendation will really help us, because the recommendation take a very, very broad perspective, as it is about capacity building. It is about policies. It is about nurturing the openness. It is about internationalization. So if we can all together try to really try to promote the value propositions of the recommendation, I think it will help. And also, as OER is a catalyst for opening up education as such, and for innovative and modernization of learning and education, it will help. So it's not just about the resources as such. And I think also it is important to stress about what the open licensing mean, because many people are not aware about Creative Commons, for example, and what that really means. They think that as it is available on internet, it is OER. So that there are so many myths about OER, and I think we all have to advocate about what it really is and what it means, and how it, as it is said by UNESCO as well, is more or less the only way to reach the SDG goals, not at least number 4, about access, about equity, about quality, about lifelong learning, etc., etc. You who are here, you know them all. And then secondly, I think it is important to, as it was addressed at your conference, and what I also hear very often, to align open education resources together with all the other open movements, as was expressed already in 2018 at the Cape Town Plus 10 declaration, to align it with open access, with open partnership, with open pedagogy, because it requires another kind of pedagogy really to work on open education resources. So if we can align it also to the, for example, what was described already in 2018 in this Cape Town Plus 10 Plus declaration, it will help us a lot. Thank you. I will stop there and let someone else in.
Thank you, Eva. Any immediate questions or comments to what Eva said? Otherwise, I think we could move to the panel discussion. So that would be with Eva, Davor, Daniel, and Jacques, our presenters and panelists. And the focus, let's start with what has been touched upon through all these presentations. We have experiences from different sectors, different countries, and how can cross-sectorial and cross-country collaboration influence the development on open education in Europe? I will start with Davor and Daniel with relation to the Uncorpus project. It's a Erasmus project, right? It's European scope. We're talking about European OER repositories. How is it relevant outside of Europe?
Daniel, you want to go?
Yes, that's okay. Thank you, Davor. Thank you for the question, Tarun. I think, to be honest, that this is, I can say the usual words. This is a challenge, this is an opportunity, but honestly, this is a mess, okay? This is a mess because we have, it's not just about the resources. Resources are easy to sell somehow. It's not about content anymore. And we are very much deep into this open education culture, okay? And there are many other things beyond resources. We have the practices, we have the business models, as we said before, okay, the sustainability models. We have a number of things talking about open education. And it's not just about the content itself, but there are a number of layers, including the culture and the approach to this culture and the understanding of what open means. This is a regular discussion that we have in the back at La Rioja, okay, the institute. That what open means everything open for everyone, anytime, anywhere, or you can actually put some limitations there. And if you put limitations, it's open, it's not open. So, and it depends very much on the culture too, okay? Just inside Europe, we are really a crisol of cultures. Depends on how we approach all this. So in fact, what we expect in the project is also to bring some middle ground, some understanding, just to survive the nightmare of so many definitions of open, so many approaches to open education and to resources. I think this is the beauty of it, okay? Because I already said before sometimes that the open, the definition of open is open itself. Well, it depends. There is no one single definition for open, okay? There are 20 people here, 20 people with what they think about the open, and this is still the beauty of putting all together and understanding, okay? So the project, in our case, the Encore project, will bring this together. And because we have to make the discussion, the dialogue possible between many different aspects, meaning the type of the institution, the approach from the stakeholder, from the final regular user, so from the culture, from the country, from the language, and all together just to try to bring some sense into the question. So I think this is the actual mess. This is what I like and what this is excited about. And our actual challenge is to make this understandable and to provide this dialogue between all these different factors and inputs across the various states. Okay, this is my view, at least.
Thank you, Daniel. Davor, maybe you would like to supplement. You mentioned the different partners and the design of the project where we have commercial business partners and the academic sector all together in one project investigating the value propositions. Any thoughts on the replicability to outside of Europe on that?
Let me give you a very different example, a completely different entry point, right? So at the moment, with the Knowledge for All Foundation, we're funding machine learning fellows, so colleagues of ours in sub-Saharan Africa. So we are funding David, who is doing work on the Ewe language. So the Ewe language has I think 80 million speakers, right? So, but they don't have a very good machine translation service for Ewe into English. So that's a very interesting problem. So we're funding him to create a data set. Then he'll create a corpus out of that, a language corpus. Then he'll apply and he'll devise machine learning models for that. Then he'll be able to have a baseline and create machine translation models. Then once those models are done, he'll have a service that will be able to translate from Ewe into English and back. basically, since it doesn't exist, this service doesn't exist at the moment. So what he is interested in the end goal is literally take a Word document and translate it from English into Ewe. Now, if you scale that up and you say that you have educational texts, right? Ideally openly educational and freely educational text, because that allows him to reuse them much quicker. So he's not infringing any copyright. He'll be basically creating a service for his own language in the educational market space for 80 million speakers. So that's something really unprecedented in a way, right? So you're basically funding something right there in sub-Saharan Africa, but it bridges into a completely different landscape in Europe through languages, right? In a data sense, in a digital sense. And we're doing this for Tunisian languages and so on. And it's just so mind-blowing how much you can do at this moment, even without knowing, right? What you can do actually with OER without knowing it. And there's a huge business potential, because at the end of the day, you have to have a startup. So these guys are also thinking about a startup that they can fund, basically, employ people and work on this translation service. But essentially what it does, it translates open educational resources. So it's very interesting how work being done in Europe actually affects a completely different continent, but not in a predictable way, which is the beauty of it, right? So in this Erasmus project, if we try and understand how businesses would react to the idea of using open educational resources, or even pay attention to them for their internal purposes, HR, educational modules or whatever. Once that is done, then we can, I wouldn't really say export, but we can at least say, well, we have a working case study, and we can define a business model. There's a business model going on in this ecosystem that is based on at least one element of openness, or of openly licensed materials, and that is, I think, exciting. So taking very state-of-the-art case studies out of the landscape and showing the value for the larger business and education community. I mean, the other thing is very interesting, that by saying open educational resources, we're really forgetting about, I mean, language is one thing, but we're also really forgetting about all of the other players in this landscape. I mean, telecoms are very much interested in business within the educational market, right? Post offices across Europe and so on. So there is a completely different player, which is not native to education, but it is, powered by business and by investments. And investments are not really something that is that comes naturally in the mind of creators of open educational resources. So I think what we do in Europe many times can reach out into other continents and landscapes, and this is, I think, very exciting, because it also comes back in a different way, but it comes back. I'm not sure if I got the message across, but I'm saying that it's stuff that is happening is really interesting, away from the eyes of the usual suspects in education, which would be teachers and students and so on.
Thank you, Davor, and thank you for giving an example to give us an impression of what the technologies actually can do, and we don't even know the reach of it yet, but you're with your hands in this research, and you will be a partner in the project. So we're so grateful to have you with us. I just wanted to address now Jacques, to go over to you, because this multi-stakeholder approach is also something that characterizes the Francophone Africa project in a bit different way. But there, target groups are both at the ministerial level and at the educational leadership level. Why is that important for a capacity building project in Francophone Africa in support of the implementation of the UNESCO recommendation? You have to unmute yourself. You're muted, Jack.
Thank you for the question, Torun. I'd like to start by addressing an issue raised by Corinna Kroon in the chat. She is asking how many teachers actually use OER sources for the educations they provide. So, and going back to what David was talking about from Europe, there are very diverse cultural and governmental environments. So one thing that strikes me in Europe is that we are not very much focused on what is somewhat important for the North American market or environment, is about open textbooks. You seldom hear about open textbooks in Europe. And also, that's one cultural difference. Another one, if we go from the various Francophone environments, I'll start with France, which is mostly public higher education, state universities, and with a somewhat limited edtech sector. If I move southward to Morocco, we still have a huge dominance of public universities, but which are almost the only degree granting entities that are really recognized by the local market. But you also have some international universities. And now if I move on to sub-Saharan French-speaking Africa, what the ministries tell us there is that they have room in higher education for about 10% of the people who come out of secondary education. So the problem is not to promote public higher education, public institutions, but to stimulate the development of a local market of education providers that they will regulate. But first and foremost, before regulating it, they want to promote and develop it, because otherwise they won't have any space for people coming out of secondary education. This shows that the relationship between the policymakers and the business the business sector and the technology providers and the virtual universities can vary even in monolingual environments such as Francophonie. So we have very different approaches in Mali from what we have in Morocco or from what we have in France. Even if I take the case of virtual universities, Senegal has a very successful virtual university, which is a state university, which is the 6th state university, and which is currently the only open university because it's virtual. On the other hand, in Mali, the virtual university is a commercial initiative, and it envisions its developing its reach beyond the borders of Mali. Of course, they want to focus on Mali because the problem with security in Mali is that they are shutting down schools and universities, not opening them. But they do look beyond the borders of Mali to reach into other Francophone countries. So I believe that these are very diverse market and public environments, and that's what is interesting in the work we're going to do with ICDE and UNESCO within the various countries and the various sub-regions in Africa.
Thank you, Jacques. And I think the examples you're giving, they really show how important the local cultural contextual knowledge is when going into such projects. I would like to ask a question to you as well, Ebba, on maybe you could comment a bit broader. Why is the implementation of the, what is the potential of the UNESCO OER recommendation for open education and to achieve sustainable development goal for education for all?
Yes, thank you. That is my favorite question. Yes, I mean, if we really take the as I said earlier on, if we really take the recommendation seriously and really consider what it means, it is so much more than the resources as such, or open textbooks or materials as such. It is really about capacity building at all levels. And that goes for all the 5 recommendations, that it goes for micro level, meso level, macro level. And we also need to take that seriously. Quite often, what I see, and I'm sure you see that as well, we lay the responsibilities for the teachers, and then they don't have time, and they don't know, as it was mentioned here also in one question from my colleague from Sweden, Anna. She said that even teachers in higher education don't know what Creative Commons means, for example, which is different from the K-12 sector. They are much more aware. And if we really focus about the Creative Commons and explain what it means and how it can make a difference, I think that is one way to start. And also what UNESCO is saying themselves about the OER recommendation. From now on, or from 2019 in November, almost a year ago, everything what we are doing about opening up education, OER, the other open education movements, have to take its foundation within the recommendation, and also for the monitoring and evaluation. And that means that, how I see it, as I'm also working very much about on the quality sector, first of all, there are no incentives why one should use it, or why one should work on OER. There are no incentives at neither at micro level, meso level, or macro level. So that is one thing we have to work on. Another thing is about it requires a cultural change, because it is a different culture to work towards open education. And now we have the tools, as we have the recommendation, and also we need to both look international, and one of the areas is about internationalization, but we have to act locally. So globalization is another aspect of it. And also the whole quality, the entire quality agenda doesn't really embrace the areas and dimensions of OER and either open education. So the entire quality agenda, again, both at national level, but also international and at the institutional level, have to embrace the recommendations, because only then there can be incentives why it is important. But of course, we need to, in each and every moment, we need to advocate about it and to explain what it is and why it makes a difference. Recently, a study was conducted in my own country, and it focused not just about OER but on MOOCs, but also about digitalization as such. But on the questions, it was made for higher education, and quite many were not aware of it, and also quite many are also just looking at in their own sector instead of looking broadly. For example, to supply the lifelong learning area. They only look at their own course, their own module, their own students or whatever. It's my students, my course, my OER, and they don't look broader than that. So there again, there need to be incentives, for example, from the university side, that this is one of the third mission, for example, to provide learning materials, resources, which are available for all. So there are many issues to think about, but my main message again is about to really take this recommendation seriously. And I think one thing also what is needed is to translate them so they can be understandable in people's own language, and maybe simplify it somewhat to make it understandable. But if you have the information in your own language, you are more keen to adopt it, I think. We have, for example, just done that in my own country as well.
Thank you. We have a question from Christine Guzmão from Brazil to Davor and Daniel. She asks, I would like to know if the Encore+ project considered the use of artificial intelligence to recommend OER repositories according to the areas of interest of the users or likely languages, or to disseminate new materials.
It does. We have developed that technology, and it's part of the what we would call foreground for the Encore project. It was done in a different project. It's not a project anymore. It'll finish in December, but it's not really a matter of defining it as a project. We're keeping that technology and we're pushing that technology in line with the recommendation as well, right? Forward. So Encore Plus, whoever joins Encore Plus can join that network, make use of the technology, no problems. And it's specifically designed to understand and digest OERs from different cultures, different languages, and then recommend them with AI to users, online users. And it has a set of different interfaces. One interface is a search engine. The other one is sort of YouTube style that would take teachers through videos. So we kind of played with a lot of these, and it'll definitely be available for partners in the Encore Plus. And if you join our network, definitely yes.
Thank you, Davor. There's been some comments on the chat on capacity building, and Eva, you also talked a lot about that. It was pointed out by one of the participants that the awareness might be larger in the with teachers on the high school level than on the university level. I don't know if more participants agree to that from their experience, but on the capacity building, we have talked a lot about capacity building of the recommendation on the national member states level, ministerial level and educational leadership level. But what about capacity building of OER on the users and producers level, as was mentioned here from Lars? How can ICDE and our members and network help? What kind of activities would be relevant for capacity building on, so to say, the more of the user level? Does anyone care to respond to that? No? It's getting late. Well, the comments from the conference.
Torun,
yes,
if I can say.
Daniel, please.
I was listening here, trying to adjust the lighting. That is a little changing. Now it's dark, deep dark here. And I think that the licensing, of course, is one of the key issues to us, no, in the project, and also to us in my own institute. Okay, licensing is a challenge still for producers and for everyone. And I think that we have to find the balance again. This could sound a little diplomatic, but it's the right approach from my end. Okay, so we need to keep the license in mind, and keep in mind also that there is some cost when we produce some materials, and even the distribution and the access has to be covered somehow. Okay, so we want to have all these for producers to have the open license, meaning with all these nuances that we can actually apply to open, what means and what is the actual type of, for instance, Creative Commons license, that there are many. Okay, so we can select there. It's not the only one, but we can use those, for instance. The point is, how can we survive that? Okay, I'm a producer, I'm a content producer, I'm a practice designer, I'm an instructional designer, and I want to give for free. Yeah, but for free, but I have to eat somehow. Okay, I have to get something out of that. Maybe it's not money, maybe it's recognition, maybe it's promotion, maybe it's a network, maybe it's something, but there should be some sort of trade, some sort of change. And it seems that there is a long-standing position that this is still just putting the two positions in the corner. Okay, a binary position, it's open or it's not, and we need to break that. I think the project actually brings this into our reasonable argument there. Okay, that there can be mixed models. The business models, the sustainability models can be mixed, can be some part open, some part closed, and we at the university have a number of examples when we combine access, free access, registered access, open access, and prepaid access. And this can really live together, and there is no problem for that. I think that we have more refrain about the concept, about being open, free, and all this combination of things, that the actual implementation of this licensing, which shouldn't be that difficult. Okay, we need to break that wall, but it shouldn't be that difficult to make a reasonable implementation for everyone, including providers. And of course, why not? Okay, it's not just, I don't know, open means also reciprocity. It's not just consuming for free. Okay, this is not just downloading movies piracy for free with no rights. This is not the case. Okay, I should give up something in exchange. Okay, so it should be a bilateral trade, and when we don't understand that point, it means that I'm getting for free and giving nothing in exchange, and this is not healthy for anyone. Okay, for anyone, we should find that agreement definitely in my view.
Maybe I can add just shortly. Your question about from the user side, and the users are often the learners. So maybe two good examples. One from Africa. We know many of us that Africa, and our ambassador from Africa, she also often tell us this as well. That in one way they are quite often more far ahead than we, for example, in Europe, because people can't afford to buy the materials. So that makes, of course, a difference, and that is why the users are more demanding of open licensed materials, and that, of course, move the movement a bit quicker. That is one example, and another example is also from one of our ambassadors in the committee, and he is from US, and that his college they work with student ambassadors for OER. And I think that is a very, very nice approach, because first of all, to engage the students, and when students are engaged, and then when they started to demand things, there will also be a change, because then suddenly there need to be a change. And of course, we have all seen also that the rise of the use of open license materials has been, of course, increased during the pandemic, because it was needed. So when you really need something, then there's possibilities for change. But let's say if all of us could work with the students together to make the movement a bit quicker to move.
Thank you, Ebba. I see that we are approaching our deadline for closing this workshop, and so I think I will draw it to a close now. Just summing up, I just wanted to, of course, inform anyone who isn't so familiar with ICDE that you're welcome to engage with us. We do a lot of different activities, such as events, conferences, webinars, reports, and we also have several interest groups and networks through our community. And our next event is this President's Forum, the virtual ICDE President's Forum. It's taking place on 25th of November. This is for members, rectors and presidents. It's about educational leadership in the context of the pandemic and how we can recalibrate it to be more resilient. But we invite everyone who is interested to contribute with the pre-conference activities, blogs, blog posts. So you're very welcome to address any leadership challenges that you would like ICDE rectors and presidents to discuss on the day. And you can check out that website and see the different contributions that already came in. And please also follow us, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on social media, read our blog and our open scholarly journal, Open Praxis, and we also welcome more members. So I want to thank you, everyone, all the participants, for your engagement and support, and thank you to the panelists and presenters, and thank you, Anais, for putting this together. So with that, good afternoon and thanks. See you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.